Singer. I came very close to having to silence Professor Singer, which has been intimidating for me as a near undergraduate. now our final constructor speaker today, Dr. Wicks, the floor is yours. Whenever you're ready for it. You're here.
Usually when people preface their remarks with all due respect, it's a sign that what's about to follow won't be remotely respectful. So I want to elaborate a little bit and express my respect for the position being advocated, and this particularly for the views of Peter Singer. I'm a philosopher by training and very interested in history of 20th century philosophy, and I think we have much reason to be grateful for Professor Singer's work. He did more, I think, than almost anyone else to start philosophers talking about things that people who are philosophers care about. I think that's a great gain. There should, I believe, be a practical orientation to even the most philosophical discussions of ethics. If we're not really deliberating how we think we should live, it becomes a sterile exercise. So that's one reason I think I'm very grateful. And also, while I'll be taking the position that it's not an ethical requirement that we abstain from eating meat, I think it's important to say that animal liberation and the movement it helped to cultivate has done a tremendous amount to reduce suffering in the world, and we should be very grateful for that. And I say these things unreservedly. Well, the position taken hasn't just been about animal suffering, but it has been at its very center. And indeed, in Professor Singer's work, there's a strong line of connection with the utilitarian of Jeremy Bentham, who said, when we're thinking about animals, the question we have to ask is not, can they reason, not can they talk, but can they suffer? Well, I think that's a question, and I think it's an important one. And I certainly agree that as soon as we've identified a being that can feel pain, that's a reason to care about the fate of that being. I don't accept that ethics is just a matter of the reduction of suffering and, conversely, cultivation of happiness and well-being. But I don't find for a second it's important. I do think, though, sometimes we can get a sense that the emphasis on animal suffering can miss important aspects of our relationship with animals. Professor Singer has for most of his career been advocating both at an academic level and in popular press the view that we should ethically be vegetarians. Shortly after Princeton, he became somewhat responsible for writing a review dealing with another aspect of relationship with animals, arguing that the taboo against bestiality may be just that, a residue of an old-fashioned prohibition on the procreative sex. Now, I mention this not just to tar one view by association with another, but to point out that both views come from the same basic theory, the theory that all that really matters is suffering. So forms of bestiality which involve cruelty to animals are, of course, completely out, no rough stuff. But otherwise, where's the problem? Where's the harm? Now, I wish to advocate, at the risk of sounding somewhat old-fashioned, rather different view. So you can summarize the difference as such. Professor Singer thinks that it's wrong to eat animals, but under the right circumstances it might be okay to have sex with them. Whereas I'm going to think, at the risk of sounding old-fashioned, the opposite view. I want to say that, just again to clarify, that while my view is opposite in that sense, it's not the mirror image of the view you've just seen here. It was said that we conceded a lot of ground in saying that as it's currently constituted, the industrial factory farming source of the vast majority of the meat we eat is ethically indefensible. Well, we did say that, and I want to repeat it, but I object to being told we conceded ground. That ground wasn't conceded, it's common ground. It's common ground because people who hold both sides of this proposition can agree on it. It's an important agreement. It means there's lots for us to do. But it's not the same as the question, is it okay for us to eat meat? So we're not here as defenders of the status quo, nor do we advocate the killing of, what's her name, Gracie. Does going vegetarian make a difference? Yes, it does, of course it does. I think it's one very reasonable ethical response to the current situation. I just don't think it's required, it's the only ethical response. It's important to keep track of why people abstain from eating meat. If you're presented with some food, some meat, your decision to eat that meat will have no bearing on whether or not that animal has suffered. I mean, that's too late. The choice to reject is an attempt to change the system in the future. It's prospective suffering that's trying to be avoided. Well, vegetarianism is one way to do that, although it's worth remembering that as we develop industrial scale of production, we also start distributing food in a way that individual choices threaten to become trivial. If you were to decide never to eat meat for the rest of the year in your own dining hall, do you really believe that will send an economic signal that will in any way change the numbers, even by a single one, of the animals who are killed? Probably not. I suggest that's implausible. But there is another reason not to do it, which is that your decision not to eat the meat isn't just there as an economic signal. It's also there to change the culture. It's there to send a signal to other people to get them thinking. Most vegetarians are converts. And they'll tell you the story. And it's, I've spent a lot of time in churches, it's like giving testimony. Someone confronted you. And so there's a signal. I think that's one way of doing it. But given that we're doing this in the future, given that we're trying to change the culture, given that we're trying to send signals, why not send signals which try and encourage the expansion of more ethically raised farming? It's too late for the current generation, but people are paying attention to the future. I'll make one final comment about the more ecological side of this, which I think is secondary but still important. This is hugely controversial and has a tendency to deal in, I think, rather misleading ways with averages. In some places, the production of meat is vastly inefficient as compared to other kinds of food source. In some places, while less efficient, the numbers are quite close, far less likely to be persuasive. It's also the case that the numbers are hotly disputed. The UN report you were shown was very divisive, and the committee that produced it has been critiqued quite thoroughly since. There's no point in me just denying the figures, because then it just becomes a question of who do you trust. You've got no particular reason to favour one person over the other. I encourage you to do some research. You're trying to find reliable arguments, both sides come to your own decision. Your Princeton students need to do that perfectly well. So, in conclusion, Paul McCartney is wrong, as he is. Paul McCartney recently said he would never play a gig in China after he discovered how the Chinese treat dogs. Which suggests he hasn't really been paying much attention to the way the Chinese treat people. In conclusion, yes, we should treat animals ethically. Yes, that calls for radical change in what we do now. But treating animals well can include killing them and eating. Thank you.